We've got usual kind of, I think everybody's up to speed with this now, just if you can keep yourselves on mute to save some interference as well. And if you have got any questions, the guys are really wanting people just to interrupt with questions. So if you have your hand raised or you put a comment in the chat box, myself and Don Ann will keep an eye in the chat box to see if there's any questions. But I think really the key to this today is to try and get as many questions and input as possible to the session. Just our we'll do a couple of just to be updates for members just at the end of it. I'm just conscious I want to try and get the guys to the table now and for me to stop talking. So without further ado, I'll introduce you first to Dave and to John. So Dave, do you want to take it away?
Great. Greg, thanks so much. And it's wonderful to be virtually back in Scotland and also to see so many friends and colleagues. So John and myself are absolutely passionate about the opportunities for Scotland. And so we're going to run through some of those with you today and obviously do as much Q&A as possible as well. So Scotland, the same as other home countries, are now moving from crisis to recovery from the pandemic. And Scotland has always had a unique opportunity, but I think it is now more than ever the opportunity for it to become the fittest and by default the healthiest home of nation. So Scotland has 32 unitary authorities, but it has 1,200 community councils, and it's those sites that are embedded in where your sites are embedded in those communities. And it's those local areas that are going to be the basis for empowering individuals and improving the health of the nation. So let me just mention, so I've had my 2 vaccines, and vaccination rollout was amazingly well coordinated, particularly here in London. But I think that we're now moving from that national rollout to a local empowerment. If we're going to empower and get the local people fitter for, dare I say it, the next pandemic or the next flu or the next thing to hit our local communities. So as you know, I'm a data guy. So I did a bit of, I looked at the database, and so pre-pandemic, Scotland had 353 public leisure sites that with fitness. So what I was intrigued to discover is that that's more than any other region across the UK. So collectively across those sites, you had around 355,000 monthly direct debit members. And again, interestingly, at 6.2% regional penetration rate, it's higher than any other region, even higher than London, which comes in at 5.6. So that's a pretty impressive start. And the private sector has fewer sites, but pre-pandemic has more members. Now, I've done a bit of the back of the fag packet calculation, and there are 2 things that are going to reduce the size of the private sector. First of all, sleepers. There's around 15% sleepers, we estimate, across private sector in Scotland. And we know across the whole country, there's around 35% of cancelled memberships across the private sector. So if you put those 2 together, that means that the private sector could potentially drop by 50%, which again gives the public sector an enormous opportunity. The other thing that gives the public sector an enormous opportunity are the facilities. So you have by far a better range of facilities. So you should be singing and promoting about those facilities far more than you actually do. So you have more studios, more pools, more sports halls. Those sports halls have been repurposed in many places. So the bad news was no studio classes in the studio, but the good news is studio classes can take place in the sports hall, same number of people, but spread out more. So you have more golf, obviously, more indoor and outdoor tennis, more saunas, and crucially, more outdoor space. And that's why over 400% more outdoor classes have been taking place this year. And what's interesting as well is that the fitness equipment, between 20 and 79 stations, the public sector has more of those as well, which is like a sweet spot for community facilities. So public sector, we think, is the only provider that has the sites in the right place and the range of facilities. So it makes Scotland's #1 partner to improve the health of the nation. So John and I are now going to talk more about how we think that that can happen. Over to you, John.
Well, thanks, David. I think that there is a huge opportunity, as David has said, but I think it's one of those things that is going to really capitalize upon the opportunity. It's going to require us to think a little bit differently than we've done before. And I think the first thing that I would say is that if we're really going to heighten the notion of physical activity in the nation's consciousness, reach people that we've never reached before, then that's going to take courageous leadership. And I'm sure we've got courageous leadership in abundance here today. But what do I mean by that? Well, I mean that we have an opportunity, if we're prepared to take some risks, to think about sport and physical activity like we've never done before, and do some stuff that we've never done before. I don't know what that might be just now. We haven't done it yet, but it's allowing our minds to free up and to connect with people at a local level where things really matter, and we can really engage. We can really engage people. I think one of the things that we'll do, one of the things that the last 12 months has taught us, is that we're going to have to subtly change our language. I think we'll probably need to talk less about fitness and more about health. We know that the commercialized fitness product has touched only 15% of the population. So we haven't got anything to fear. There's a huge opportunity and there's huge potential to go on. I think we'll need to talk less about markets and more about communities. And I think we need to embrace sport as just another way to take care of our physical health, our mental health, and our social health. You know, sport isn't just something that happens on the telly. Neither is it a preserve of the elite. It's something that we can all do. And we all heard people say, "Oh, I'm not very sporty." Well, who cares? Frankly, you've got the facilities. Can we hold a racket? Yes, we can. Well, you can play sport. So I would say then, how do we really understand the different segments of our community and find a language and a proposition that engages with them? You know, that there is some differences in the way that we've got to present and market our proposition, because I think one of the things that we should remember is that our product is an emotional one. We're in the business of emotions, and we must understand that sport and physical activity is not a tangible product. You can't touch it, you can't take it home with you. It's how it makes you feel. And again, if we're going to communicate this to even more people, we've got to think about how we want people to feel. So whether I'm working out, whether I'm taking a class, whether I'm having a swim, a game of footy, I get an emotional experience. So I'd encourage us all to think about, you know, what that customer experience is. How do you want people to feel? And then tell them how they will feel if they participate, and build your activities and your service proposition around that. And I think it'll be more important to understand why people don't exercise than why they do, you know, and if we can get an understanding of that, then we have a far better chance of designing and delivering something that meets their needs. As David said, you know, I think Scotland is in one of those unique positions. It's actually far more progressed. We talk about connecting with different parts of the system, don't we, David? And I think Scotland is more progressed in the connection with healthcare than we are in over the border here in England. You know, the relationships already exist, so that subtle shift in language is going to be really important. But I think there are other opportunities that David and I have spoken before. David might talk about allotments in a minute. You never know. But there's opportunities in to connect with education, to connect with social care, so that we can facilitate physical activity being used to enhance the lives of a great many more people that we've perhaps not touched before. And it's not about barging into those sort of new relationships and say, hey, we understand exercise, it's good for you. It's about being respectful and collaborative and saying, you know, what is it that we could do together if we hook up with those different agencies in your communities? What is it that we could do together so that we can impact society? What is there some help that we can bring to you? Because I think, and this is a language thing again, I think the opportunity in the future to really grow participation and grow this movement that David and I have spoken about is to not see ourselves as facility operators, but to see ourselves as activity enablers. For many people, they're just not ready to come to a facility, but if we can connect with them somehow and somewhere in the community, and we can just get them moving, then we'll have played an important early role. And so taking care of that connection is important too. And so whilst we've spoken about memberships, I think in the future we'll think about memberships in the context of membership. We promote activity. We don't close a sale, we open a relationship, because the relationship we have, remember, this is an emotional thing. Every one of our customers is different. They have their own reasons for being physically active. So we have to be relevant and meaningful for them according to their own personal reasons. So when we communicate with them, then it has to be personalized. And I think that's where, I'm sure David will talk more about that. This is where digital comes in. I think in the future, it's critical that we embrace and exploit digital technology for all it's worth. Quite frankly, if we don't, the likes of Apple, Google, Amazon already have. The digital relationship that we have with customers in your communities is probably the most commercially valuable thing that we have. If we connected with them, then we can communicate with them. If we can communicate with them, we can nudge their behavior. But really investing in technology, I think, is a critical thing. And David being a data person, when you go digital, you get insight, and that allows us to make really informed decisions in the future based on insight rather than gut feeling. So I suppose my sort of four biggies are, you know, it's the future is, if we're really going to grow the number of people that are participating, then it's going to be about caring for the health of the customer, creating an emotional experience for the customer, being digitally connected with them so that behavior can be nudged. And as a consequence of all of those things, I think exercise can become habitual, and we will have created, in David's words, this sort of legacy of the pandemic.
So if I could just follow on. So the pandemic really affected the older population. So 3/4 of the people that have died from COVID were over 75. Yet, if we look at both sport and fitness, less than 1% of our population are either members or participating in sport. And when you think of people that are 70, that's really the new 60, or even some of us may even remember Sport England's 50+ campaign. And there is certainly, I would say that the not so much sport, but fitness has an ageist problem. So the first time I finished my indoor cycling certificate and could teach, I turned up at a health club, and the receptionist asked me if I'd cycled before. And then when I got into the studio, someone suggested that I ought to take a bike at the back to keep out of the way. Little did they know that I was the instructor. So I think that the ageism is a problem, and we can easily get around that. The other thing is that people often think that the old people can't afford it. But if you actually look at the statistics, people above 70 have actually accumulated more wealth than any other age category. So there's huge opportunities. And when you think that the private sector are just not interested in that age group, then that gives you a whole opportunity for a much bigger market that's completely untapped. And John, as an operator, will have more on that.
Well, I think there are a number of groups that are untapped, and I think you're right, David. And I think that the ability to reach them requires us to appreciate, as I said earlier, that when we're messaging out to communities or to particular segments of the community, we've got to use imagery and language that is relevant and meaningful to them, that they can connect with. I think too often that we tend to have a very generic approach to promoting our proposition. We tend to think it's about facilities and what have you, but it's actually about, as I said earlier, it's about the emotion, and it's about what is it that an older person, what experience will appeal to them? What language should we use when we're talking, when we're trying to appeal to older people? And you'd repeat that for different segments, but and you know, we tend to be perfectly formed for what we've got. You know, but if we think about programming issues, for instance, for older people, you know, when are the older people going to be available? Older people, when are going to be available? How will they where will they see the message that from a marketing point of view that could get them involved? And I think it's about thinking smarter about different cohorts of our customer groups.
So by 2030, over 27% of the population in Scotland will be aged over 70. So again, as an industry, we can no longer ignore this incredible percentage of the population. So this is all part of building up to having the healthiest home nation. Most of those people would have heard about the R number. Most of those people would have seen on the news everything about the R number is either going up or coming down. And if it's below 1, then it's good news. And if it's going above 1, it's bad news. So why don't you, as an organization, create an E rating, exercise rating? So E equals the overall exercise indicator of health of each neighborhood. And remember, we're talking about the 1,200 local neighborhoods. So you can create something brand new that people would want to be part of and contribute information towards. And again, as I said, the vaccine was so successful because we relied upon an amazing centralized organization. If we're going to level up the health of the nation, we need the exact opposite. We need you with your embedded sites in that local community to empower the individuals. John.
I think that's a really important point and a really big learning, I think, from the last 12 months. There's an awful lot of, I think from the local authorities that I've spoken to, and bear in mind I've been involved in sort of within large contracting organisations. Whilst there is something nice about engaging with a large contracting organisation and getting consistency and efficiency and all of those sorts of things, actually one of the things that became apparent over the course of the last 12 months is that local authorities were interested very specifically upon the impact that you could make locally. What are the specific conditions, the specific nuances that exist, that only exist in a local situation, and how can you alter your proposition and be agile enough to respond to very local needs and local circumstances. And I think that will absolutely carry through over the forthcoming months and years. Sorry, David, off you go.
Yeah. So I think that COVID actually showed the NHS to be all powerful in both thought and deed. I mean, the very fact that the population was applauding Thursday evenings, I found incredibly emotional. Dare I say it, it was probably as close as we get to a unifying religion that we've had for the last year. So during those darker moments of the pandemic, people knew that the NHS was there. In future, I want them to think that their local leisure centre is there. And I want you to think of all the extra things. So, for example, I go every week to my local sports centre and have my flow test done. And although I've had both vaccinations, the NHS are encouraging me to go every week and still be to have the test. And that again continues to build up a relationship with my local sports centre. So I think that going forward, if we forget about the word fitness, I think fitness is going to be just a personal word. So you'll talk about a personal fitness level, not about a fitness industry, because so far the fitness industry has failed to get really beyond 15% of the population. So in future, if we talk about exercise, movement, wellness is a big word now, that all needs to be linked into health and education and thought of from cradle to the grave. So we need to think about how people think about the NHS and relate that back to what we're providing, because we can be part of an essential element of keeping people fit and healthy. John.
I think this the point you make about appealing to, that we've worked exceedingly hard, yet in terms of the proportion of the population that we touch as facilities, we've got to 15%. And this goes back to my perspective around, rather than see ourselves as facility operators, can we start to build connection with people digitally so that we can be their activity enabler, and they can start to become they can start to exercise in an environment that is comfortable for them. They might go for a walk around the park or whatever, but we can still support that. The other thing about this 15% of the population, I think, as I said just a moment ago, we're sort of perfectly formed for what we get. We've developed brilliant marketing strategies, brilliant programming strategies, wonderful pricing strategies that all only appeal to 15% of the population. So my challenge to us all is, what do we have to shift? What do we have to alter around marketing, around programming, around our approach to pricing that makes it appeal to far more than we've got just now? That requires us to start to think about this thing about language, and particularly think, as David has just suggested, far more about taking care of the health of our communities, and then how we become relevant to how we eventually emerge as that, and playing a role in this sort of preventative health agenda. That's where we're going, David, isn't it?
Yeah. And one of the things that we haven't talked about is nature, and how nature is important to all of us. How we all found getting out of our houses and having that 1 hour of exercise in the local park, or by the local canal, a river. And Scotland is playing host to the COP26 climate summit in November. This is so important. I mean, think of it, first of all, from the Pope has said it's time to change course, and has committed the Vatican to net zero emissions. And the Pope is actually talking about actually attending this climate summit. So again, this gives us as an industry unique opportunity to say what we're doing, how we are encouraging people to reconnect with nature. And Sir David Attenborough is a great ambassador for this. And Scotland has some of the most wonderful natural environment that anyone could wish for. So fitness brands and suppliers need to move in the same direction. So we need to say what we're doing about net zero emissions, and we also need to work out how we can help people reconnect with nature. So instead of taking a class indoors or even outdoors, why not take the class on an outdoor walk? So use people that are in the area who have that local knowledge about nature. John's also been laughing at me because most local authorities have waiting lists for allotments. And here in London, developers are actually now saying that they are including communal grow gardens in new developments. People want to go and feel that they have a connection with nature. So dare I say it, do you have a pitch that's spare that you could dig up and create into a new allotment? It's exercise. Digging is exercise. Dig for victory. We do laugh about it. Well, I laugh mainly, and David laughs at me laughing. But when we talk about broadening, thinking differently about our proposition in the future, this is not so daft. I'm sure you will have come across schemes if you're already talking to people in social care in your local authorities,
who are trying to get people engaged into community stuff and particularly think about their mental well-being and their social well-being. Being outside, connecting with nature, working in on an allotment and what have you, is being used, and that will become a feature of social prescribing, and that's something that we can certainly start to connect with. So this is about different thinking. It's about a far more collaborative approach, I think, in the future, to the way that we think about our business, and thinking about it on a much broader base. I think that's our message. And as I said, I think, or we think, that the connections that you already have with different, and certainly with the healthcare pathway, puts you in a very, very good position to achieve that objective, as David suggested right at the front end, of being the healthiest of the home nations.
No, you've heard from both of us. Do we have any questions? Do you want to challenge us on anything? Anything that's come up in the
So if anyone can either use the featuring teams just to raise your hand, or or even to talk about, have you done anything like this already? Have you done anything on a local level where it's worked and you've reached out to your communities? Anything that maybe you've got a pocket of genius that you could maybe share or open up the discussion with, or even just general questions on even some of these incredible stats that David was coming out with? Sorry, David, what was it? What percent of the population will be over 70 by, I think,
27.
27%.
Yeah, by 2030, 27% of the population in Scotland will be over 70.
And that's not too far away.
And should I? Do you know that the Pope has now set an annual day to honour older people? So it's the 4th Sunday of July. It will take place for the first time this year, and he has lamented that they're often forgotten, but they have great wisdom. And they have an enormous amount to offer society. So he's having a mass for older people, and there will be obviously events around the country. And again, your sites are embedded in the community, and you'll be able to take advantage of that.
Indeed. So I mean, that's phenomenal. Okay, I'm just going to head over to Fraser. Fraser, if you want to unmute and just pose your question, that'd be great.
Thanks, Dawn. I've just popped my video back on there because I understand that a number of members will want to see my rugged, handsome, good looks again. So I just popped myself on there. John, David, thanks very much. 2 roles, East and Berkshire Leisure Trust, and also chair of the Scottish Leisure Network Group. So thanks for coming along. I really enjoy the opportunities to chew the fat over some of these topics, and it's really insightful. So I was actually just sitting back, really enjoying the conversation there, and I've taken a few notes as we've gone along. And I fully understand the use of language and the behavioural change that we need to look at. There's a whole number of us within the group probably sitting in the call who are scratching their heads over their business plans going forward, 12, 24 months. I guess, and maybe coming up even more to you, John, in terms of, what would your business plan look like for the next 12 months? And I guess that's quite an open question, even if you were to say or pinpoint what you would see as the best opportunity for the next short to medium term.
I think it's tricky, because I think there are 2 levels, Fraser. I think it's a really, really good question. I think that firstly, I'd be wanting to make sure that the customers that I'm still connected to feel as though they're really still cared for. And so when we do when we open up, we've done everything that we can in terms of developing that relationship with those existing customers that we've already got to make sure that they feel special, because you've got to get as many as you possibly can back that you had before. So I think that's number one priority for me, to understand exactly where they are. I'm sure you will have been in touch with them, you'll have surveyed them, get a sense of how they whether they're anticipating or how they're anticipating coming back, and try to ease their anyone who's got who's perhaps less assured. What are the things that you can do for them? Because, you know, whatever you had last March, you're going to have less than that now, but you've got to try and get as many as you possibly can who are really enthusiastic about coming back and feel assured about coming back. So that's the first level. I think along with that, I'd be from a business plan point of view. Obviously, it's about revenue. So you want your high revenue lines really taken care of, and I think one of the things that I'd be putting into my business plan is having a think about what my competitors might be doing. Now, some of you might be in smaller rural communities where there isn't competition. Some of you will be in your cities where there is competition, and so there'll be difference. But where you've got competition, have a think about what it is that they might be doing. So, because the private boys are under a heap of pressure, and they will be relaunching in a really aggressive manner. So I think I'd be looking at what are the distinctive things that I can, what might they be doing? I certainly don't want my customers going back to them. I want to be keeping them. And where is my differentiating points? Where can I be better, provide more opportunity, have a greater, a nicer experience, maybe where we can connect on a more personal level, on a more community-based level. I think that would be a big feature in my business plan, and I think it's about critical sort of shop selection. I'd be using and think about who you might collaborate with in terms of reaching competing against our competitors. Who might you collaborate with in order to build a sort of bigger proposition, or a better proposition, or reach them first? I think, because there'll be a lot of people wanting to come back. So how good is your lead generation?
Yeah.
Your lead generation net? Are there other marketing channels that you could use to give you an advantage?
And in health terms, we always talk about the fact that there's always somebody worse off than you, no matter what accident you've had. But economically, bear in mind that there's always going to be someone worse off than you as well. So think about the fact that people like David Lloyd Leisure have been burning around 40 million a month for the last 12 months. So, you know, some of the private sector people won't be opening sites that have never made them any money. So some of they won't necessarily open sites that are being marginal. So we are going to see a shrinkage in the private sector. We're going to see a shrinkage, as I mentioned, because of sleepers. I wrote about the fact that there was going to be shrinkage, and one of the reasons was sleepers. 2 people phoned me from the city, and both of them said, I've been paying for the last 5 years and I've never been. So thank you for mentioning that. And thank goodness they've cancelled my membership. So the other thing to think about is, I know that there have been lots of opportunities for families to exercise together, inside and outside. And think about how you can include that in your new programming. I think that the programming needs to be completely rethought, and moms and kids exercise classes, whether it's indoors or out, it should be included, and so I think that completely rethinking the programming would be a great start.
I think that's a really good point. I think going back to the question that Fraser raised, you know, thinking about those differentiating points, we tend to have, as David said, about in terms of the breadth of facilities that we've got, we have some natural advantages in the public sector. We tend to have exclusivity over swimming, and that's a brilliant family orientated activity. So there are two advantages there. We also tend to have larger facilities, more space. We might have purpose-built studios, but we might also have multi-purpose activity rooms and things like that, and sports halls, and that gives us an opportunity to go much larger than our competition can around group exercise. And the great thing about group exercise is that it's a stickier product. Once people start doing group exercise, they tend to go with other people, and then when the question comes, oh, shall I go this week, it's not that you're just letting you're not just letting yourself down, you're letting your friend down as well. So there are the social health benefits and the mental health benefits around group exercise are really, really strong. And I think that's something that those three differentiating features, the fact that you've got swimming pools, the fact that leads to families, and the fact that you've got space that you can really do big and varied group exercise programs, are terrific advantages that we have got in the public sector over the private sector. And those are the things that I'd be really starting to develop, I think.
Thanks very much. Thanks for answering that question.
Something just to drop in there. I don't know whether if you've been keeping a wee eye in the chat, but Tony from Isle of Lewis Sports Centre, you know, quoted some figures to do with the NHS budget. Tony, are you wanting to unmute and pitch in? You're on mute, Tony. That's you. Oh, hang on, you're muted again. Right, go for it now.
Hi everyone. Sorry, technology isn't what it is in the Isle of Lewis. Broadband can be a wee bit twitchy. Yeah, it's just really how we think about as a group like us working together, how we can look at tapping into some of the NHS deeper pockets than we will ever have, and how that can improve public health. We know that the messages are clear. Physical activity should be part of the public health message, which is what you've said earlier. And it's how we tap into £15.2 billion of money to get that message to the powers that be, so you can deliver those services locally, as you suggest. So any ideas you have on that would be very useful.
I think well, I think that there's an opportunity for you on a couple of levels. I think that building those links at a local level, and I'm not familiar with in England there are local health boards. There's a requirement on local authorities to have joint strategic needs assessments, and that has a tendency to bring the system together, and I would encourage leisure always to play a part in those things, so that you're immediately connected with other parts of the system, and notably health. So can you start at a local level, if you've got something similar as a health and wellbeing board, can you start to invite yourself to play a role at a local level on those health and wellbeing boards? Given that the second thing is, I mean, I've been really impressed that I mean, it's new to me, but the conversations I've had with Dawn and with David around what you've managed to do, and the supportive nature that you've built with the Scottish Leisure Network group, I think there could well be something that you could all collaborate on, and give yourself a you know, a larger voice. Maybe you have some, you know, you collaborate about campaigns. You know, can you secure, can you collectively then put a case together that where you can draw down some funding around health and well-being campaigns, because you're all standing shoulder to shoulder, which doesn't happen, by the way, down here. It's, you know, it's dog eat dog. And so I think it's a terrific opportunity that you've got if you can build on the work of yourselves as a group, and start to share about ideas about how you might, you know, some campaigns that you could put together in order to draw down funding. I think that's a really interesting opportunity that you might have. I know that's not a very technical answer, but I don't know whether you've got any thoughts, David.
Well, in 2016, through the Scottish Cloa, we did an analysis of all the members of fitness sites throughout Scotland. And obviously we learned that it's an incredible diverse population. And Chloe is talking to us about updating that. And I think that the more knowledge you've got about potential changes in your own industry, but also potential changes in the private sector, starts to build up that unique knowledge that you can build on to say that we are the only public sector provider that has the right facilities in the right place that can actually support the NHS. So I know from my own mother's illnesses at 97, how Sandwell, local authority in the Midlands, was very joined up, and there were different areas from her leaving hospital, getting a personal trainer, and getting her back at home, being independent. And I just thought, wow, that's such a great example of joined up local authority. And because you're all connected, I would have thought that there's already enough of a starting point for you to start talking about, dare I say it, instead of the R number, the E number. You could create the E number almost overnight. And then start building on that. So over the next 12 months, you would have an enormous amount of data on your local E numbers to take to the NHS.
Perfect, David, thanks. Chris McIntosh, just from Aberdeen Sports Village, has just, Chris, you've just popped in with a bit of a statement on the chat, but yeah, it'd be great if you could unmute and maybe just share with the rest of the guys that are on here about what you're doing up in Aberdeen.
Yeah, no problem. My video's not working on this laptop, I'm afraid, so it'll just be audio. But yeah, one of the things that we've got in place is a cardiac rehab programme, which links with the NHS and Aberdeen City Council. So on the back of that, we reached out to a company called Future Fit Training, who are going to deliver and have been delivering a return to exercise programme for COVID. So we're going to be launching that literally just now on the basis that we'll be open on the 26th. Just something to think about, because we've got the NHS and the council pretty much engaged in that straight away. So might be something to think about in your areas.
Yeah.
I think that's a great point, Chris, and Future Fit have done an awful lot of work on the COVID recovery plans. There's a number of people out there, and I think, you know, I would encourage, you know, contacting cause in terms of training and what have you. Think about if you're going to forge links with, if you've not got links, as Chris has got, with those healthcare services, forged them on the back of COVID and long COVID recovery plans, and there are some good people in the industry who've developed the skills and the resources that could support you in doing that.
Thanks, John. Can I just come in there as well? Actually, we've got a hand raised just by Sharon. Sharon from Lovergyle, would you be able to unmute and speak?
Hi there, thanks, Donna. And yes, sorry, I've got no video either, so it's just audio. It was just to say that we've actually just launched this week our online Argyll Active programme, which is aimed at any members or any people in the community who have long-term health conditions, and we're currently accepting referrals from physio leads and physio teams within our areas. Yeah. I've worked quite hard to establish good working relationships with the physios, and they're really keen to kind of come on board with us. So that's our virtual programme that's just launched this week, which is exciting. And we also offer an Argyll Active programme in facilities, which obviously at the moment is obviously not happening because we're not open, but sort of similar to what the gentleman before said about the cardiac rehab, be looking at falls prevention, that kind of thing. So it is key is about establishing those relationships with the NHS, and they do seem, certainly Argyll and Bute, they're very keen to work with us, which is really welcome as well. So we're looking forward to where that's going to take us in the future. Thank you.
Great.
Can I come back on the online one, Dawn? I think there's a connection with who Danielle spoke about, technology, which is a really good point, and it can be tough, but there are partners out there who have technology who could support you. So I mean, some of you will have put your online solutions up and done them yourselves. Others may well have formed relationships with people like Les Mills and got content out. But working with partners, the likes of Les Mills, the likes of MoveGB, who will embed a platform into your existing system and allow you to get online content out there, that is a good means of also grabbing data, because once it's connected, then you can people can register, and I think it's being to answer Danielle's question, whatever system you've got, it's being really precious about the data that you can get out of it. So once you've got a data record, cherish it so that you've got some means of communicating with them, and in terms of your sort of relaunch plans, your recovery plans, people like generating others who've got existing technology platforms that could support you, people like MoveGB, people like Hustle, they will drive custom and provide you with insight as well, and certainly in the appropriate locations, I'd be looking to form partnerships with people like that who could provide you with insight, and to respond to Danielle's point, at no cost to you.
Yeah.
Thanks, John. Sorry, David.
I think that's really important. And when we think about moving from assessing and managing these complex series of risks that we've been going through, so the NHS have been doing the daily monitoring of infections, reported cases, hospitalizations, deaths, and dare I remind you, the R number. So if you as a group start thinking about the opposite side of that, you start embracing the wellness. So the lady that's just spoken about fall prevention, for example, well, think about balance, think about the chair exercises, think about all the other things that you start talking about, both usage at your site, but also usage in people's homes. So you start collecting far more data and compiling that data, because it's health related data, will become very valuable to you. as a group.
And just to jump in, thank you both so much. I'm conscious of time. With a great Kim from Moray, she just also put into the chat just a great thing that what's been happening with NHS Grampian. Kim, are you able to unmute and contribute?
Yeah, just similar to the conversations, really, that to help reduce the amount of hospital admissions because of the COVID increases over the winter. They were very keen to do an exercise programme connected with people with respiratory conditions, and they actually approached the 3 local authority areas in Grampian and seeked our help to reduce that need for hospital intake. And the results have been fabulous, despite it being a very short-term programme. And we now are truly embedded into conversations at strategic level with the NHS, which is really, for us, never happened before. So it's really quite exciting and a positive outcome of COVID.
Great.
That's
Great.
terrific news.
Amazing, absolutely amazing. Thanks, Kim. Thanks so much for that. Greg, I'm going to hand over to you, and anyone else. I know we're conscious to kind of keep it to there. If anyone else wants to raise a hand or put a question in, bear in mind it is being recorded, and if there are questions you think about afterwards, certainly please get them into operations@slng.uk, and we can share with David and John, because they're good souls like that, and they'll give us an answer back anyway. Greg, over to you.
Yeah, great. Thanks. What really good discussions there, and I'm listening to everything that's been said. It's very much going to be about that partnership working, and as Kim just mentioned there, I think it's always been very difficult, the relationship between leisure and GPs, NHS, etc. I'm in a fortunate position. My wife's a GP, and when we have conversations about this now, it's like it's very much polar opposites. It's medication against exercise. So trying to get that shift and change, I think, from an NHS point of view, can only be a massive plus for the public sector, as we want to try and achieve. So I think we'll just need to keep knocking on the door and try and get to those tables as well. So really good insight from you guys today. I think everybody will agree that it was really interesting to hear your points and your take on things as well. I can only just thank on behalf of all the members today for coming along and speaking to us. We've had another fantastic turnout, which we always seem to do. People seem to like coming to the Leisure Networking Group meetings, which is brilliant, and it would be really good if we could get to our annual conference this year and be able to do face-to-face with that. Just so you know, just to kind of keep the dates, Wednesday the 1st and Thursday the 2nd of December is what we're aiming for. Hopefully in person, and it'll be in Stirling. So we'll keep monitoring it, and we'll see how it goes. But maybe just want to keep those dates in your diary just now as a backup. And we are also looking at our regional seminars again. We had obviously the proposal that we were going to go forward and have a North, East, South and West regional meeting prior to COVID. We've obviously done some online ones, but we will look to try and get them back on the table and in person as soon as we can. But I think there will be that hybrid option that individuals will be able to still come into those meetings. Now, I know some of our members up north will probably be disappointed in that, because their line managers might then say, well, you can go online now rather than coming down to the Central Belt for a jolly, which might disappoint some of you. But it could be beneficial at the same time as well, that people are busy and time is precious as well. So more will come out on that. We've got a few more things to try and look at with that as well, including a platform that we'd use. So just a couple of updates from us there just now. But I think probably that's a good point to stop. We've kept it to the hour, which is good. Obviously, people have other things to do today. So again, just like to pass on our thanks from everybody to both John and David again as well. And hopefully you'll come back soon and see us again.
We'd love to.
Thank you.
Okay, that's great now, guys. So thanks so much for coming along today. And we'll be in touch with the next one. We aim to maybe try and have another one in June as well. So but we'll get some details out about that as soon as we can. And
Thanks,
thank you.
Dawn.
Many thanks, Greg. Many thanks.